history teacher. I also teach classics and Latin. I am going to tell you something about how we teach history in Danish high schools. Because I think that the way we do this differs from how you teach history. There are some ideas behind the way we are teaching history in Denmark. And the idea is that there are some main areas of history that are supposed to be covered. The students has to know something about ancient civilization, about the Renaissance and about the Enlightenment. But we keep the historical facts at a minimum, because we believe that present-day students in Denmark, they don't need to know the year of the death of Napoleon. If they need that knowledge, they are able to take their mobile phone and look it up, okay, and find the year. So we don't want to use precious education time to let them learn this in their heads. So we have these historical facts at a minimum, and we want them to read some primary sources as well instead. Because we believe that reading primary sources, reading texts from the ancient civilization, reading texts from the Renaissance, makes them better thinkers. We train their critical thinking, and we make it possible for them to discuss how history is being used today all around them every day. And that is what I'm going through here, how we do that. But yeah, how is this done? They have history all 3 years of high school, and in the first year, all of the students have to write a history assignment of 8 pages. One of the demands of this paper is that they analyze some sort of primary source from the historical period they're writing about. For example, if they are writing about the World War II, they can find a speech that Hitler held, and then they analyze it, and what is Hitler saying in this speech, and why is he doing it, and they are discussing this in their 8 pages paper. It is possible for them to select history as one of the 2 subjects for their 3rd year assignment, which is 25 pages. And in that paper, we require them to do the same thing, have primary sources. And the exam, which I will return to later, also focuses on the analysis and discussion of primary sources. Okay. We have 23 main areas that we need to cover over the 3 years. And I have listed some of them here: ancient society, medieval Europe, the world outside Europe. We actually have to make a course focusing on Asian history or South American or African history. Renaissance, Enlightenment, industrialization, and the battle of ideologies in the 20th century. And we have this list of 23 subjects that we need to cover in the 3 years. We must, in each course, touch both Danish and world history. So they are not very narrow areas. We have to broaden it out. Yeah. Okay, I'll return to the primary sources now, because that is what we focus on. We focus on these primary sources because we believe that it will create these independently thinking, critically thinking students. And the way we are progressing is that in the first year, the teacher sets the assignment. I decide what are you going to look for in this primary source that I am now giving you. So I give them 5 questions or something they have to analyze and discuss while reading their paper, their source. And this gradually changes during the second year, when I ask them sometimes to copy the way I make questions to the primary sources, so that when we get to the third year, I am not asking any questions. The students are asking the questions, and I evaluate their questions and their ability to ask and answer relevant questions. So that is how they are evaluated. Are your question relevant? Is it interesting? And are you able to answer your question using the primary source? This speech from Hitler, or this text that Machiavelli wrote in the medieval times, or this ancient historian who wrote about Julius Caesar, or what. So that is how it progresses during the 3 years. And then we really much like to discuss with the students how history is being used, and not less important, misused, because we believe that politicians, people all around the world, is trying to use the history to change the minds of the students. And we don't want that, so we want them to be able to think for themselves and say, oh, now this politician is using history in this way. That is not right. History was different. And we discuss this almost every time. 2 minutes. And example of people using and misusing history. It could be movies. We could watch an entire movie. I recently watched, I don't know if you have seen the Kingdom of Heaven movie with Orlando Bloom. I watched that in my class. We had a course on the Crusades. Then we watched the movie and discussed how it represented these Crusades, because it is actually misrepresenting the Crusades, and I was able to discuss that with first-year students. And this makes history seem more relevant to the students, because the students, if I taught them, okay, Napoleon died this year, the Battle of Waterloo was 1813, and they think, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to know when this battle took place, and in a modern world? So this makes the subject seem more relevant to them. So yeah, I'll just skip this because this is almost what Line told about how a typical class is delivered. They have read 4 to 5 pages at home, and then I talk to them 15-20 minutes, and then group assignment, and in the end a discussion. But I just want to finish with the exam, because I think this is a very different type of exam, because we have 24 hours of preparation. The students one day go to the school and draws a subject, and to that subject they get a total of 15 pages with the primary sources. Different primary sources, 8 to 10 primary sources, total 15 pages. And then they go home, prepare, and then we have the day after 30 minutes of examination. And then in the 24 hours of preparation, the students have to choose the question. They have to choose one question that we are going to discuss during the examination, just like in the class. So we have, they make this 10 minutes presentation of what of this question, including trying to answer it with the primary sources they were given, and then follows a 20-minute discussion with me, the teacher, where we see if the student has gotten this right. And the evaluation and the grade depends on the relevance of the question and the student's ability to answer it with the primary sources. So we actually award higher grades to those students that are better at posing the right questions, answering them, and think critically. Yeah, that was it.
Okay, Dachahao and Shishi. My name is Trygve, and I'm here to tell you a bit about social science in Denmark. And our goal in social science is to give the students the ability to navigate and try to give them the tools for solving some of the challenges in this century. And we study all kinds of topics, both locally in Denmark, regional in Europe, and then of course globally for the whole world. Since we have such a short time, I'm probably going to skip some of the slides. But in Denmark we have 3 levels of social science, A, B and C. And the A level is the highest level. That's a 3-year course. If they have it on a B level, then it's a 2-year course. And it's, as Line said, it's mandatory for all the students to have it on at least a C level, which is for 1 year. So, what do? We study politics, we study sociology, we study economics, and of course, and this is the major study field, is international politics and international economics. So these are the 4 disciplines that the students must learn when they have been there for 3 years. And I'm going to give you some examples. For example, well, I don't know if you know what Brexit means, but it means that Great Britain has just left the European Union. There's a lot of discussions about that in Denmark. So we are trying to figure out what are the consequences for the European Union after Great Britain has left the Union. That's one of the topics that we're going to study. And then we also have something about how climate change will affect global immigration. For example, we get a lot in Denmark, we get a lot of refugees from, as Flemming said, that was over here, sorry. We get a lot of refugees from Northern Africa. And why do they come to Denmark? Well, that's because of water shortages and so on and so on. So we study why the global immigration patterns. Then we also have some example like this. Is it possible to turn our economy towards a more sustainable economy? With recycling and so on. How do we do that? And then I brought this, why is Denmark the happiest place on earth? In international studies, Denmark always seems to be the happiest people on earth. And why is that? We don't know for sure, but we have some ideas. Yes, this is what I really wanted to present. Because, of course, like Flemming and Line said, we are trying to make the students think critically and always be critical of reading when you read a text or study a subject and so on. But the new thing in Denmark is innovation. Over the last few years, innovation has been growing. So we, as a school, must also prepare the students for the problems in the 21st century, challenges in the 21st century. And this is something that we in social science take a great part of. For example, the students will have to figure out how to preserve and how to how to preserve the Danish welfare system in the future. In Denmark, we have the demography is so that we have more old people and fewer younger people, and how to preserve our welfare system with that difference. It also we also could study how our energy production could become more sustainable. For example, with windmills, solar panels, and so on. So the main focus here is to give the students the tools to come up with some new ideas, some creative thinking on how to solve real-world problems. So that's the end of my presentation. But if there's one thing that I think you should take with you from this presentation, is the innovation part. That's the new thing in Danish education. How to teach the students to be creative, come up with some solutions for real world problems. And that's why we in social science also we make a lot of we make a lot of we work together with companies and governmental organizations and so on to see what real problems look like.